fullness of our lives, may your word be shown. Amen. Dr. Fram has done some very interesting work around the traits of what are called the pillars of morality: empathy, cooperation, fairness, and reciprocity. And he has done it through studies of chimpanzees and elephants and others. And just to say that empathy and those types of those four pillars that make morality are shared as well under some of the primates and some of the other animals. And I'm going to start with a 2-minute clip of one of his talks. Now, his accent is fairly heavy, so you'll have to pay close attention to it. But I want to start here when he's talking about fairness.
So this became a very famous study, and there's now many more, because after we did this about 10 years ago, it became very well known. And we did that originally with capuchin monkeys, and I'm going to show you the first experiment that we did. It has now been done with dogs, and with birds, and with chimpanzees. Mr. Sarah Boston started out with capuchin monkeys. So what we did is we put 2 capuchin monkeys side by side. Again, these animals, they live in a group, they know each other, we take them out of the group, put them in a test chamber. And there's a very simple task that they need to do. And if you give both of them cucumber for the task, the 2 monkeys side by side, they're perfectly willing to do this 25 times in a row. So cucumber, even though it's really only water in my opinion, but cucumber is perfectly fine for them. Now if you give the partner grapes, the food preferences of my capuchin monkeys correspond exactly with the prices in the supermarket. And so if you give them grapes, that's a far better food. Then you create inequity between them. So that's the experiment we did. Recently we videotaped it with new monkeys who had never done the task, and thinking that maybe they would have a stronger reaction, and that turned out to be right. The one on the left is the monkey who gets cucumber. The one on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is perfectly fine. The first piece he eats. Then she sees the other one get a grape, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. She tests the rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again. So this is basically the Wall Street protest that you see here.
So a sense of fairness. Grab something down a little closer to you. I'm going to make it work today. A sense of fairness. We see that in the gospel lesson, anyways. What's happening in the gospel lesson? What's happening to this man who's been crippled? And we hear his story. How long was it? It's a test. 38 years. Wow, I'm impressed. Okay. in Luke's Gospel, it's a wonderful story in which they open the roof up and lower him down. He doesn't have any friends around to help him. They've given up on him. And every time the water stirs, the angel have come and stirred the water. He desperately tries to make him just to touch the edge. And he can't. Now, I don't know if he reacted like a Capuchin, but he had every right to. Every right to ask the question, why me? Why is this happening? That sense of fairness. Has anyone here been to St. Joseph's Oratory in Montreal, at Mount Royal? On the east side of Mount Royal, Judy, and okay, there's been a few that have been up there. What do you remember about it?
On steps?
Steps. It's at the highest point of Mount Royal, on the east side. I think it's the highest place in the city. And as you go up, there are 280 plus steps to get up. And then in the center, what's in the center? For those who have been there. There are the pilgrim steps. Okay, there's a sign, it's a big out, please, in French. Please allow just pilgrims to use these. And pilgrims use these 99 steps. And they usually go up on their knees. Oratory means, by the way, a small house of prayer. And that's how it started. Brother Andre, who was beautified in 1987 and 2010, was canonized as a saint, Saint Brother Andre. He was the one who, through a ministry, because of his life story and sort of where he came from a position of very ill health, he set up this ministry of healing, a ministry of looking after the sick. And people were healed. What else strikes you remember about, I was 13 when I went to it, and it struck me as being a very wonderful and strange place at the same time. I mean, beautiful to see all around Montreal. But what about inside? Anything catch your attention? Dave? You didn't get inside, okay?
I think there's crutches on the side, wasn't there?
A whole wall of crutches and braces and things that were left there by the people who had been healed. And my mom has polio. She had polio when she was born in 1939. When she, just after her second birthday, she contracted polio. So about a decade before the vaccine. Okay? And I remember thinking at the time on the crutches and thinking, why these people and not my mom? So that sense of fairness. What are some of the questions that we bring to these stories about why does God choose to heal this particular person and not someone else? The questions around healing, around why people suffer, why people deal with it, I mean, they are endless. Where do we go for answers? Where do we find that solace, that comfort? And if we don't get the answers because we have not enough faith, well, some people would tell you that, and they're dead wrong. Asking the questions and struggling with this and saying that it's not fair and railing against humanity and against God sometimes is one of the best things that we can do in our faith. I think that it shows our faithfulness. It shows who we are because it shows that we are human and we are ready and willing to wrestle with all of these questions and even wrestle with God. I mean, at Evelyn Jordan's funeral on Monday, one of the things that I talked about what dementia does and the ravages of dementia. She had it for more than a decade. And really, Evelyn was find ways to make connections, be able to remember with our hearts. There are so many occasions in which there's suffering and pain, terminal illness, for instance. What can we do? Well, friends, I don't have any answers, but I do know that we can help one another struggle with the questions. We can be with one another, and we can provide healing and strength. May not be recognizable in terms of what we want, but in terms of what we need. I was digging a little bit because I was very interested in this memory that came up as I was thinking about fairness and healing, about St. Joseph's. Now, St. Joseph's, it's after the father of Jesus, St. Joseph, the worker, the patron saint of workers. One of the statues that you often see with a hammer and a chisel. And Brother Andre was, one of the things that happened to him is that he was very ill in health, and actually when he applied to the Order of the Holy Cross in Montreal, his superiors didn't think he'd make it. He was too frail, and they weren't sure whether he would be able to endure. Well, he lived to be 91. Okay. But he entered, and what his task was to begin with, and this is something that shows sort of the humility of Brother Andre, was that he was a doorkeeper. A doorkeeper for a school. Okay? He was a receptionist. And he also cleaned lamps and brought in firewood, and he carried messages to the students. That's how he started. But then there was something about his nature, something about his sense of suffering, of being there, because he had lost both parents very early in his life. He was ill health. There were so many things that were going against him that he made it a cause to reach out to those who were ill, to those who were sick, those who were troubled, those who were poor. And they began to come. And one of the things that he wanted to do was to build a place that he said that what you need to do is to go and make novena and pray to, now this is in the Catholic sense that praying to saints was very important. And to pray to St. Joseph for healing. And people began to be healed. That's where the crutches started. On that one wall. And the oratory started as a very small chapel. And people started flocking to it. Actually, it started on the campus of the school that he was. He just started a little building, and he started people there, and they prayed. And then he wanted to build on top of Mount Royal. And he had this vision of building this basilica that is, it's the largest basilica in North America, I believe. And it's in terms of the dome, it's the third largest in the world. St. Peter's is number one, and I'm not quite sure where the second one is. And that was built, finished in 1967, but it started out in this sort of this small place of prayer. And it was quite interesting. had strength and that she could care for her children and for her family. May we encounter these stories today, one about fairness and healing, about the man that wants to get down, desperately wants to get to the edge of the pool, and Jesus looking him in the eye and saying, "What do you really want?" And then taking him by the hand. Now, it gets him in trouble because it's Sabbath, but that's another part of the story. And then we have this interesting story of Paul. And Timothy and probably Mark are with him. And they're beginning their journey. And all of a sudden, Paul has this vision that he is to go to Macedonia. A man is calling to him in the dream, "You need to come and help us." And so he goes. And this is the first convert in Europe. So it's a meaningful story in the Gospel of Luke. And it's interesting that it is a woman. Actually, it's very exciting that it's a woman. Lydia, who's a God-fearer, she's gone to worship and to pray. And she is by the river. Now, this is a strange twist to the story, because usually Paul's practice was to go to the synagogue on the Sabbath and begin to preach. So we don't know whether in Philippi maybe there wasn't a synagogue. I'm not sure. But he doesn't go. He goes and finds this place and begins to encounter these women. And their hearts are moved. If you don't recognize it, you should see in that story allusions to the Emmaus story, in which the risen Christ teaches along the way. And then in the act of hospitality, he is fully recognized. Lydia's whole family, now Lydia is a woman of means. Okay, she runs her own business. She is the purple or dyeing for purple was something that was done never an option.